NCT Dream, Dave, dropping their first, I guess their first actual album. They're part of a larger collective, NCT, um,
Yep.
and this is their first album in terms of their like subgroup, which is
Yeah.
again this
Subunit.
is subunit. So this is something that is a little different than you typically get in the United States pop world. But I thought this had some pretty awesome tracks on it. Hot Sauce, the first album, dropped today. Did you like this album?
Actually did like this album. I did not know what to expect all that much. We talked about the fourth NCT subunit quite recently, Wavy, and Wavy exists because they are specifically targeting Chinese audience, singing in Chinese. And NCT, of course, the very big, all-encompassing SM Entertainment K-pop group, over 20 members, lends itself to having multiple groups within the big group. Understand that. In the case of NCT Dream, which has been out around a few years, but mainly releasing EPs, they initially were created to target like teens, because everyone in NCT Dream at the time of founding were teenagers themselves. And I guess that's an interesting strategy, right? You don't really see something like that, because again, like something like NCT is a gigantic group that people can come in and out and do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just really like isolated to the K-pop world. You don't see that anywhere else, right? And from what I understand with NCT Dream, the original plan was this like graduation system where once you were no longer 18, you would graduate off the NCT Dream roster and newer idols would take their place, right? And it's actually, I guess, an example of like fans winning out, because in 2020 they decided that the original 7 members of NCT Dream, led by one of the NCT superstars, Mark, NCT Dream was just so popular in its original iteration that no one wanted them to graduate. No, they wanted this group to stay together. And sure enough, that's what they did. And you have the original members finally coming here with Hot Sauce. So it's kind of an interesting, like a lot of K-pop groups, there's a lot of interesting meta narratives to it going in. But at the end of the day, even if you don't know none of that, you have no idea what anything about NCT is, I think it's hard to deny a lot of these songs. There's a lot of really tightly made songs here, as we've come to expect from a lot of major label K-pop groups at this point.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting concept to have like a group that's the name is bigger than the artist. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you're just gonna keep moving people through rather than it being about the actual singers. It's really we should maybe talk about that a little bit more at a different time when I can formulate some more thoughts around that. But yeah, no, I totally agree with what you were saying about the music being undeniable, and I feel like it starts out pretty much right from the jump. I thought the first track and the title track, "Hot Sauce," was just a really like gripping and fun pop song right away that pulled me right into the album, and then following up with maybe my favorite song on the album. I guess it was a couple of tracks later, but "Dive Into You," the third track, I thought was really strong. Um, just fun pop K-pop sound. So I don't know. I think there's a little bit of range on here. You know, there's a little singingness, a little bit more of like the boppy, like fast paced singing. But overall, I thought they did a lot of stuff well. What were the tracks that stood out to you?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we said this before with the Shiny Comeback and Wavy, but like a tight package, 10 songs, 35 minutes, there's surprising amount of range on the album. I agree. I think it starts off really strong. Hot Sauce, Diggity, Dive Into You, very familiar, but familiar for a good reason, because they're really effective, bouncy K-pop songs. Dive Into You in particular, I thought that chorus really shined. Quite enjoyed that. Yeah. Countdown 3, 2, 1. That's probably the best example of hip hop. They're not like the biggest rappers as far as like K-pop rappers go. Like, I feel like they really stick to more of the more pop leaning. And then you get the more balladry, slower stuff to round it out. So like I feel like a lot of these K-pop records, whatever your fancy is within the all-encompassing sound of K-pop, it seems you're getting on this. And I'm not super familiar with those other NCT Dream EPs thus far. I believe there's 4 of them, but and that's another thing too. It's like the NCT Dream, like their identity as like the Wavy identity makes sense to me. They're literally using a different language, but for NCT Dream, it's like do they stand out as like a very distinct group apart from say NCT 127, the other big subunit of NCT, or NCT proper, which has released albums quite recently too? Like does NCT Dream really feel like musically sound that different? I don't know enough to say that. Obviously,
Yeah.
these 7 guys led by Mark, who was in Super M and is a big K-pop force in its own regard. These seven, Dream Seven, like they're clearly connected with their fans. But is the music actually that unique compared to the other projects everyone's involved in? I can't say,
Yeah.
because like
It's a good
it
question.
feels familiar to me. It's good, but like it does feel familiar.
Yeah. I think that is, one of the things about K-pop, and we've talked about quite a few K-pop stars, but there is like a very like almost a very recognizable sound, and I feel like a lot of these songs are in line with that, like you said. But I also feel like 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 the ones that you mentioned, those first 3 tracks, I really liked Rocket, A&L. Like you hear those a lot on like even like a similar sound even on like American pop charts at this point. There's a formula to a lot of these pop songs. So
Mhm.
I think even if they are, kind of in the same vein as a lot of these things, they're still making really quality songs. And if obviously they're getting enough attention where whether they're standing out for their sound or for just who these guys are, they're doing something that is really connecting with their fans. And that's more than a lot of groups ever end up doing. So good on them. I wish I spoke Korean because I would have liked to know more on like what the lyrics were saying. But
Right?
I
Yeah.
enjoyed the songs where they do sing in American a couple of times.
Gotta go. Gotta go.
American
Sing.
English. Wow, fucking American asshole right here.
You can go on YouTube and turn on subtitles, and you kind of get the auto-generated stuff to keep up. I found that I've done it for BTS, and like it works, for the most part. But yeah, I mean, with the music, you can connect with the music without understanding anything they're saying. It's a good sign.
Yeah.
No question.
I know it's funny as you were saying that. I'm like, yeah, BTS is definitely one of the groups that stands out to me as like a more unique sound. Then I was like, oh yeah, because they're BTS and they're the most famous group in the world.
Right.
So
Also, I wanted to note today on Twitter, the release day, May 10th for Hot Sauce, there was a K-pop trend, worldwide trend happening, but it wasn't NCT Dream. Like they were trending too, but a higher up trend was the latest comeback for EXO, which is the other gigantic SM band that's a few years older than NCT. And I found that incredibly strange that SM would announce a hotly anticipated comeback for EXO the very same day one of their other marquee groups is releasing something. Because obviously they're all super tactical with how they promote everything on social media and stuff. Why on earth would you do that on the same day? You're just sucking the air out of NCT Dream's like big day,
stepping
What's
on
up
your
with
own
that?
product, kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
very weird.
Yeah. Well, we'll be talking about more K-pop releases as they come.